Today we're going to take a look at blueprints, what they are, why you would use one, and how to create one. For several years, Prodigy has had the ability to create study plans for students. They could choose the date they began studying for boards, the date they anticipated taking boards, and the study plan creator would take all of the reading materials in the library, divide them up into roughly equal weekly reading assignments, and then create a quiz automatically at the end of each week based just on that week's reading material so they could check their progress. Faculty began to use the study plan creator as a way to create a comprehensive automated review for students and still be able to track their progress through their weekly quizzes. The biggest limitation to that system was that the faculty didn't have as much control. The computer automatically divided the material up based on workload. Faculty wanted the ability to decide how long the study plan lasted, what materials appeared in each week, and even the ability to create off weeks to cover holidays. And now the Blueprint Designer allows faculty to do every bit of that and more. So let's take a look. In the panel on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a list of folders that represent the NBCRNA classifications for the board material. If you click the little triangle next to any of these folders, you'll open it up and you can see all of the materials that are inside that folder. For example, here's Basic Sciences. Here's all the materials on equipment and instrumentation, advanced principles, etc. You'll also notice that we still have professional issues listed as well as a board preparation folder. Even though professional issues is no longer tested in the system as part of boards, faculty still have the ability to create study plans based on professional issues materials and even issue quizzes on those materials. The board preparation folder just contains any materials that we put in for the student that addresses taking exams in general or how to prepare psychologically. If you look above this panel, there's a little text link that says sort by category. So sometimes you want to create a study plan that's not in keeping with the NBCRNA way of classifying material. For example, if you wanted to do a section on cardiac, you'll notice that the NBCRNA groups cardiac in several different places. Cardiac anatomy will fall under basic sciences, cardiac surgery would fall under advanced principles, cardiac monitoring would fall under basic principles of anesthesia, and you'd like to group them all together. If I click sort by category, it will take the entire list of study materials and reorganize them under slightly more intuitive categories. So here now we can see that under the cardiac folder, all of the cardiac materials are grouped together regardless of how the NBCRNA would classify them. Also, if you would like to see one of the articles, you can click on it in the list and then click Preview Selected Document. So you can always take a look at the materials that you're going to assign to a week in your blueprint before you assign them. Now let's take a look at some of the options at the top of the screen. Box 1 says Choose Duration, which is the duration of our blueprint. If I click the selector, it may go off screen on the recording, but you'll see that we can choose anywhere from 4 weeks in duration to 16 weeks in duration, the length of a semester. Using the concept of off weeks, as I'll show you later, you can actually have a blueprint that's shorter in duration than 4 weeks. For now, I'm going to leave this blueprint at 4 weeks in duration just so that you don't have to watch me add materials to 16 separate weeks, which would get a little redundant. Box 2 says Select Start Date, and if I choose a date, let's say I wanted a blueprint to start on January 1st, you'll notice now that each of these lists has a week with the actual dates listed at the top of it. The next option asks me to enter the maximum questions per week. So as I mentioned, the Blueprint Creator will automatically generate quizzes based on the materials that you assign in each week. This will allow you to limit the number of questions that they would receive in a given week. If there aren't that many questions available in the system on the selected topics that you chose, then you might not reach 100 questions in that week. For this example, I'm going to set it to a maximum of 50 questions per week. Option 4 says Type the blueprint name. Whether you're creating blueprints or you're designing custom exams in the Exam Composer, I've learned that the most efficient way to name a blueprint or an exam is to start with the course name first. So let's imagine I have a course called NUR 600, and I would like to call this blueprint January Blueprint. The list that you select them from will be in alphabetical order. So if you're looking for the blueprint for a particular class, it'll be much easier to find if they're all grouped by that course name first. Box 5 tells us to now add the study materials to each week to make our blueprint. So I'm going to collapse this folder, and if you'll notice, week 1 has a green square highlighting it. That means that week 1 is currently the active week. If I click the header on top of any of the other lists, it will make that week active. So for now, let's go back to week 1. So let's imagine that my January blueprint, I would like to have a certain category covered each week in the system. So let's say week 1, I would like to go over cardiac, week 2, respiratory, week 3, neuro, and week 4, maybe obstetrics and pediatrics. If I open up the cardiac folder, I can double-click any of the items within it, and they'll be added to the active week. If I double-click one and decide I don't want it in the list, then I can just double-click it in the list and it'll be removed. In this study plan, I know that I want to add all of the materials in the cardiac folder to week 1. Instead of clicking each individual item, there's a shortcut that I can use to add the contents of the entire folder. I'm going to go ahead and double-click these items that I had added to remove them. I'll click the cardiac folder, and you notice that it's highlighted. It has a blue square around it. And there's a tip over here on the right that says pressing the A key on your keyboard will add all of the contents of the highlighted folder to the active week. So I'm going to click the A key on my keyboard, and they've all been added to that week. If there are selected items in that week that were added that you don't want, again, you can just double click them and remove them from the list. So now I'm going to click on week 2. So now that week 2 is active, and I wanted to create respiratory as the topic for week 2. So I'm going to click the respiratory folder. I'll click the A key on my keyboard, and all of the respiratory topics have been added. I can do the same thing now by clicking week 3. I'll click the neuro folder, click the A key on my keyboard, and all of the neuro topics are added. For week 4, we wanted to do obstetrics and pediatrics, so I'm going to choose obstetrics, click the A key, and then go down to pediatrics and click the A key again, and all the pediatrics topics were added. For the sake of this example, let's say that week 3 crossed a holiday and students weren't going to be in school for that week. We'd like to make it an off week where they aren't required to study any materials, and the blueprint will still proceed as normal. I'm going to click the week 3 header to make it active, and you'll notice a button down here in the bottom corner of the screen that says click to create off week. If I click it, you get a notice that it will clear out the selected week and will remove all of the assignments in the list. I'm going to click yes, and now you'll see that it's left as off week in the top of the list. So that means in this blueprint, there won't be any topics in that week, and there won't be a quiz created for that week. Our blueprint is finished, and we need to save it so that we can assign it to students. In this example, we had a quick blueprint that was just 4 weeks long, and we slapped it together quickly using the A key and clicking some folders on the left-hand side of the screen. But let's imagine that you had created a 16-week blueprint that matched your syllabus exactly, and you had taken time to select specific topics. You had put a lot of work into it. Because a blueprint has fixed dates, if you notice at the top of the screen, the first week is January 1st of 2017 to January 7th of 2017, this exact blueprint wouldn't be able to be used for next year's class because the calendar dates would be different. What we can do, however, is use the Save Template function. If we save it as a template, though, it'll record all of the study items that we've put in each week, the number of weeks that we've spread this blueprint over, the number of questions per week, and so on, but it won't record the dates. So we can load the template next year, change the start date, and then reassign it to the new class. So the great thing about taking the time to create a blueprint that really matches your class is that if you save it as a template, you never have to recreate it. Let's go ahead and click the Save Template button, and I'm going to delete the default name, and again I'm going to start with the course number, and I'll call it NUR 600 January Template, and click Save. Now, the last thing I want to do is actually save this as a blueprint, which hard codes the dates for each week. If I click Save Blueprint, it says that the NUR 600 January blueprint was saved and can now be assigned to students through the faculty calendar. There's a few more buttons that we're going to come back to in just a moment, but for now, let's go ahead and look at how we assign this blueprint we've created to students. I'm going to start by clicking the Exit to Calendar button. Here we are in the faculty calendar. If you recall, everything that we assign to students, whether it's an exam or a blueprint, will appear as an event on the calendar. So to get started, let's click the Add Event button. We have several options here, and the one that we want is on the bottom, Assign a Blueprint. If you wonder what any of the buttons mean, you can click the question mark button beside it, and it'll give you a description of what that button will help you do. So let's click Assign a Blueprint. This is the Add Event window, and you'll see on the right-hand side there's a pane that says Faculty Wizard with a short description, and there's a green arrow pointing to one of the text fields. So if you ever forget what to do on this screen or what information to enter, you can just follow along with the Faculty Wizard. It says Step 1, enter a short description, and this is the description that will appear actually on the calendar, so usually something 20 characters or less will show up better. So we're going to call this NUR 600 Blueprint. So let's choose January 1st. Now also, you don't have to use the Faculty Wizard. I can click Previous and Next and move through these fields as I like, or if I've entered this information so many times, I can just type the information that I want to in these fields. You don't have to use the wizard if you don't like. If I do want to, and I click Next, it will take me to the Notes screen, and this is where you can enter a longer description, and when the students open this material on their calendar, they'll see the note as well. So let's tell these students to complete each weekly quiz, let's say the following Monday. I'll click Next in the wizard, and the next step says to select the blueprint from the drop-down selector. So if I click here, there's our NUR 600 January blueprint, so I'm going to select it and click Next on the wizard, and the next step is to choose to whom we would like to assign it. You can choose to assign any event to an entire class, to individuals, or to some combination. So if we had created a blueprint that was for a specific student, we could select that one specific student, and the item would not appear on any of the other students' calendars. In fact, material will not appear on the calendar of anyone unless it has been assigned to them or unless they're a faculty member. In our case, we're going to assign it to an entire class. So I'll click Assign to Groups, and I'll click the class of 2017, and now I'll click the Assign button. If I click Next on the wizard, the last step is to save it. So now that it's been saved, let's navigate to January, and here it is on the calendar, NUR 600 Blueprint. Once you've saved an event, you can test it yourself as well. For example, I can click the NUR 600 Blueprint on the calendar, actually double click, and now you'll notice that the Study Plan button is activated here in the toolbar menu at the top of the Add Event window. As a faculty member, if I would like to load this study plan onto my system so that I can see the materials and go through it just like a student would, then I can just click the Study Plan button, and I get a message that says it will take just a moment. Would I like to begin? Yes. And the study plan has been created. So I'll click OK, and let's go to our home screen, just like a student would. And if I click the Study Plans button in the toolbar at the top of the screen, we're now at the Study Plans window, and here is the NUR 600 Blueprint. You can see that the weeks that we have selected appear here, and all of the materials within each week appear in this list. So I can click any one of these items, jump from week to week, select other items, and at the bottom of the list for each week is an item that says Summary Quiz for week 1 or for week 2. If I click that, I can take the quiz myself. Would you like to begin Summary Quiz for week 2? Yes. And you'll see there's our 50 questions. They're taken just from the reading material on that week. We're back at the Blueprint Designer, and I'd like to show you a couple of the other features that you have access to. The first one we're going to do is to load the template that we saved earlier. You'll see the Load Template button here on the right. I'm going to click it, and there's our NUR 600 January template. I'm going to click Load, and it tells me that if I had any unsaved changes, if I was working on a blueprint, it would clear it out. Would I like to continue? And in this case, I would. So there's the information that we had loaded previously. Let's say I want to add materials for week 3. I'll double click off week to remove it, and I can select a topic, double click them and add it, and resave this blueprint. So you can make changes to it once you've saved it as a template. The other thing you can do is to preview the quiz for the materials that you've selected so far. So if I have week 3 active, you'll notice that there's a green square around it. I can click Preview Quiz, and it'll open up an exam key for that week. So I can see all of the questions, the correct answer, the rationale, and the citation for each of the questions that the students would be presented with. Now, if you've created a blueprint but didn't actually like the way you had designed it, and before you assign it to students, you would like to delete it and start all over, you can delete existing blueprints by clicking the View Blueprints button, selecting the blueprint in the list, and click Delete Blueprint. Just confirm that you're certain you'd like to delete it, and then click Yes, and it'll no longer appear in your list of blueprints that you can assign to students. The Blueprint Designer automatically creates quizzes based on the reading materials for each week, so let's take a look at where you can view the results of those quizzes. I'm going to click the Quizzes button in the toolbar at the top of the screen on the faculty calendar. You'll see in the pane on the left a list of all of the classes, and if I click one, you'll see a list of the blueprints that students have begun completing quizzes for. If you've created a blueprint and assigned it to your students, it will not appear in the list until the first student completes the first quiz for that blueprint. So if I click Class of 2017, the blueprint that we just assigned doesn't appear here yet. Once the students begin completing the quizzes, then you can click the name of the blueprint here, and a list of all the students who have completed quizzes will appear in this spreadsheet, and you can scroll across to see their highest score in each week. Unlike the exams that you assign to students through the calendar that either Prodigy has developed or you've developed with the Exam Composer, students can take the weekly quizzes as many times as they like. Their highest score will appear here, but you can see all of their scores in the student detail for the faculty dashboard, or if you use the data export module. If you like, for easier grading, you can export this information using the Excel Export button, and it will save an Excel spreadsheet containing all of this data in the Downloads folder of your internet browser.